This is Back Roads of Illinois server to farmers and ranchers in central Illinois and the Midwest. Happy birthday to my dad. It's his birthday today. Today's edition of Back Roads of Illinois. We were bringing you elastic for farming sources and information sponsored by AgriGold. We were glad you're here. I'm Cesar Delgado on today. The Grains Quarterly Report is old news from last week, but we have a government shutdown is playing out from right now. Otherwise, what's the impact on the trade barriers for our customers with China, of course? It's pretty tricky overall. We were talking about it with Brian Basting from Advanced Trading. This is Back Roads of Illinois server to farmers and ranchers in central Illinois and the Midwest. The Grains Quarterly Report is old news from last week, but we have a government shutdown is playing out from right now. Otherwise, what's the impact on the trade barriers for our customers with China, of course? It's pretty tricky overall. We were talking about it with Brian Basting from Advanced Trading. Hey Brian, how are you? And glad to see you at the Farm Progress Show indicator. Meantime, that we have a lot of stuff getting to for today.
Thanks for thanks for having me, Caesar. Yeah, it was really nice to meet you there at Farm Progress Show, and it sure looked like a great show, huge crowds and very pleasant weather, and now everyone's involved with harvest, waiting to see how that turns out. But a lot of uncertainty in the markets right now, Caesar, with the government shutdown and trade tensions, especially with China at the moment.
It was nice meeting with you guys.
It certainly was. It couldn't have been a better
Brian,
week. Yep.
let's talk about this crop is getting harvesting mode for right now. What is your feelings about the commodities markets for right now that we are harvesting?
It's kind of a mixed news, Caesar, on the yield side. We're hearing some very good yields in different parts of the state. We're hearing a little disappointing yields in other parts of the state, particularly southern Illinois. Has been disappointing, obviously, with the struggles they had with planting this spring and then the drought this summer. But other parts of the state, we're sharing some very good results. For example, up in northern Illinois, where they had more rainfall, for example, this summer. As far as the markets go, it feels very choppy at the moment. We had a Friday sell-off that was triggered by the escalating tensions between the U.S. and China, with the trade debate going back and forth between the two countries. It seems to have escalated. Hopefully that will calm down here before too long, because China is the largest buyer of U.S. soybeans, for example, and that really hurt the soybean market on Friday quite a bit. But I think the markets are going to remain choppy here short term, Caesar, as the market gets a better handle as we approach the 50% harvest mark, for example, on corn and beans and nationwide, and we start to get a better handle on what this crop size is. But it's still going to be very uncertain until this trade situation is ironed out.
How is the yields in southern Illinois and northern Illinois area? It looks pretty tricky for the trade deficit.
The yields that we've heard so far, Caesar, in southern Illinois have been disappointing, as expected, I should say. It's not a surprise. They had a rough planting season earlier this year. It was much too wet. And then when they finally were able to get the crop planted, it turned dry this summer, particularly south of Interstate 70 there in southern Illinois. So we're seeing the results. We've been disappointing for corn and bean yields. Excuse me. In contrast, northern Illinois, the early results here as we move further into harvest have been quite good. They had more rain in northern Illinois around Interstate 80 and north than we had in other parts of the state, even more than we had here in central Illinois. So I think the early results are very, very good in northern Illinois. So it's kind of a mixed bag of going back and forth. Um, Looking at the trade situation continues to be something that as we get a better handle on these yields, will be moved to the front burner. But right now, it's the yields and harvester on the front burner right now of the market.
How about in McLean County?
Overall, good. I don't know if it's quite as good as last year. We had stellar corn yields here in the county in 2024, record corn yield. And I don't know if it's going to quite match that. Still good, some cases very good, but I don't know if we just didn't have quite enough rain during grain fill, for example, in August for the corn. Now, beans, we're hearing some very good bean numbers here in the county. I think part of that was because the beans, in many cases now here, are being planted before the corn. And therefore, they weren't impacted as much by that drought that we saw develop in August and September because they'd already set pods and filled pods early because it was planted so early. Some very good bean yields. I don't know if it's going to quite match last year, but I think of the two, I think beans have a better chance to be better than 24, whereas early indications are that corn aren't going to be quite as good as what it was last year.
Sure. You know that the government shutdown is playing out from right now. We're having a database from private sector. Do you know that the yield trends are good for this year?
The yield trends that we're seeing, Caesar, with harvest, as I mentioned, is approaching 50% nationwide, maybe a bit more than that on beans now, maybe closer to 60% on beans, is that it wouldn't surprise us, not certain of this by any means, but it wouldn't surprise us to see the yield nationwide decline from where it was in September, the last time the USDA had a report. And I would say that trend is probably stronger for corn to see a decline from what that national average yield was in September. I think it was 186.7 for corn nationwide. For beans, the number in September was 52 and a half bushels, beg your pardon, 53.6 bushels. That number could come down. I don't have a stronger bias, excuse me, I don't have a stronger bias on the bean yield as I do on corn that I think that number could come down when we get the next report.
How is the reflection of the grains markets during the government shutdown?
Well, we're kind of flying blind, as you and your listeners know, Caesar. We're not getting any information on crop progress. We're not getting any information on harvest progress. We're not getting any information on export sales. So to the degree that we don't have that information, the market is trading off other factors. And what happened at the end of last week was that the trade became so volatile, that the trade tariffs, I should say, the trade battle between the US and China, that the market, in a vacuum of other information, no fundamental information, went lower very quickly on Friday. 15 to 20 cent losses in beans, 5 to 8 cent loss in corn. And now we're seeing a bit of a rebound here, at least stabilization in beans on Monday. But the market misses that information, fundamental information. In the absence of that information, it has a tendency to react to events such as the trade battle, and it can react significantly over a short period of time, as we saw it happen on Friday.
Does livestock producer can put a floor plan anymore with these prices for right now?
Yes, I would say with contract highs being made in both live cattle,
On
December December contract all the way through 2026 contracts today, and contracts highs being made again today in feeder cattle contracts. We would encourage your listeners to defend their balance sheet and look to ways to get a floor in the market, but leave the upside open. Put option accomplishes that objective by providing a floor in the market, but also leaving the upside open. And the cattle market eventually will top. I just don't know where it's going to be. No one knows where that price is going to be, but it will happen. Something will change. And I just remind your viewers to defend their balance sheet in anticipation of that eventually occurring.
What is the fundamentally on the cattle markets?
Supplies are tight here as we enter the last 2.5 months of the crop year, I beg your pardon, of the calendar year. The box beef market had been weak, but that's a seasonal trend. That's not surprising. We saw back in September and the early part of October. It has stabilized at the end of last week after quite an extended period of weakness. But the fundamentals, I would say, with the limitations also of the cattle coming in from Mexico, are constructive, remain constructive. I just remind your listeners again of the possibility always lurking out there at these price levels of black swan events. That would be an event that would be very, very unexpected and very detrimental to a bottom line. The last time that I can recall that happened in cattle was 2003, when around Christmas we had a discovery of beg your pardon, we had a discovery of the disease. It slips my tongue at the moment, but it was mad cow disease, and we had a tremendous sell-off in cattle prices. I'm not predicting that's going to happen. I certainly hope it doesn't happen, but we have to be on our guard at these high price levels.
Yeah, we will see for next couple months.
Yeah, you bet. That's all we can do is monitor markets closely and again use tools available to defend our balance sheet.
We talked about the corn yield and fundamentals. China, government shutdown. Do you have any final thoughts about the bailout for farmers in rural communities in central Illinois and the Midwest?
There seems to be a building consensus or building bias that there is going to be some type of assistance provided to producers in view of the trade situation, particularly with China. I don't know what that may entail, how much it may be, when it might be distributed. I don't have any details, but it seems like there's a building trend for something to be developed there. Some of that is complicated by the fact that the government is shut down. So we may have to be patient. Growers may have to be patient moving forward. But I do believe that is a strong possibility. If not here in calendar year 2025, then sometime in early calendar year 26.
Thanks, Brian. Good to visit with you again.
Thanks for having me, Caesar. I always enjoy visiting with you and wish your listeners a safe harvest here as we look to complete this 2025 growing season.
Brian, basting from Advanced Trading on today's program on back roads of Illinois.